Joining me now to continue the discussion on the war in Ukraine is the Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. He's a member of the Senate Foreign Relations, Budget and Armed Services Committee. He previously served as the state's governor, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. We shouldn't forget he was Hillary Clinton's running mate for vice president in 2016. Senator, good to see you again. Thank you for being with us.
Glad to be with you, Ali. Thanks.
You heard what Colonel Vindman says. We could have had the results of this referendum yesterday. There's not going to be any surprise as to how it turns out. But you have introduced a bill, and President Biden has said so at the UN, that this is not a viable referendum. It doesn't make sense. We're not going to be recognizing that as part of Russia. And a lot of people at the UN went farther than that. So did President Biden, saying, this is not supposed to happen. We at the UN have decided that countries don't take over other sovereign countries. And the whole concept of the fact that Russia is on the Security Council, this kind of thing in the future should be disallowed. If somebody invades another country, they should be booted.
Absolutely, Ali. If this is allowed, the UN has no purpose. I mean, it has absolutely no meaning. This is why the UN was created. And allowing Russia to get any traction with its bogus arguments about the need for this, we can't allow it. The good news is, my read of the UN General Assembly has been a isolation and rejection of Russia by leaders across the world. You see nations like China that have stood with Russia. They're starting to get wary and starting to be isolated for their own anti-democratic activities. You see these protests in Iran by courageous women who are tired of being kicked around by the morality police and the dictatorial government. There's popular sentiment on the move against tyrants these days, and the UN has to be clear and not muddle about where the international community stands. Russia is the lead example, but there are many other situations in the world where being strong against Russian authoritarianism sends a message to other dictators.
Senator, what do you make of the concerns that people have, and they are valid concerns, that Russia continues to say that if our sovereignty, and I'm doing air quotes with sovereignty, if anybody attacks any of these places that soon will decide that they're going to be part of Russia, that'll be considered an attack on Russia, and hence Russia will use whatever defenses it has. Once again, Vladimir Putin talked about his nuclear weapons again this week. How do you, as somebody on the Armed Services Committee, somebody who understands the world well, process that?
Well, I think it's a bluff, like Colonel Vindman. I think it's a big bluff. The use of nuclear weapons, Ali, would pose massive fallout risk to Russian citizens. Using nuclear weapons anywhere in this theater, it's not just going to invite a coordinated international response that will be overwhelmingly catastrophic for Russia, but the use of nuclear weapons also poses fallout risk in Russia. And so I think it's a big bluff. Putin is dangerous because he has his back against the wall. As you said, he had a plan to topple the Ukrainian government in 3 days. It's gone poorly. The whole world has seen it. He's been humiliated before the entire world. His forever friendship declaration with Xi Jinping before the Beijing Olympics now looks like kind of a joke. And Xi Jinping is backing away from him. And everybody knows it, and Putin knows that they know it. So he is in a tough spot. But I still think the use of nuclear weapons has much more downstream negative consequence for Russia and for Putin's hold on power than it does for other nations.
When we look at these things overseas, you mentioned Iran, the struggle there. You look at the struggle in Ukraine for democracy. What was very interesting is earlier this week, NBC came out with a news poll that shows threats to democracy was the single most important issue facing the country. People who were polled had different views about threats to democracy and what they mean. But what do you make of this? Threats to democracy actually outranking cost of living and jobs in the economy and by some distance, immigration?
Ali, I'll tell you, this it is a very strange moment. I'm 64 years old. You would never have seen a poll where that would be the top issue because we would assume, of course, we're all defenders of democracy. I was at an event yesterday at the University of Virginia where they're giving out an annual Defenders of Democracy Award. Now, normally, if you go to a banquet or an award ceremony like that, the person getting the award is a Tibetan human rights activist or somebody who's active in the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement. The award winners yesterday were 7 Capitol police officers and 3 of the awards were given posthumously, who defended us when the Capitol was under attack on January 6th. The threats to democracy, it might be Putin in Ukraine, or it might be Donald Trump embracing QAnon theories and promoting violence. We see them at home and we see them abroad, and the world has to link arms. The democracies in the world have to link arms. And we're showing, after maybe a period where we were taking it for granted or we seemed indifferent to it, we're showing a capacity to battle for it at home and link arms with nations around the world to battle for it globally.
And we should be grateful to other people fighting for it for making us aware of how serious a matter it is. Senator, good to see you. As always, thanks for joining us. Senator Tim Kaine is a Democrat of Virginia. Up next.